truce.
On the Christmas Eve of World War I, British and German soldiers laid down their weapons to celebrate the holiday together.
I'll be playing Soldier 1, John.
I'll be playing Solidier 2, Philip.
I'll be playing Solidier 3, Tom.
I'll be playing Soldier 4, Andrew.
Christmas Day, 1914. Dear Mother,
My darling Meg.
My good friend Charles.
My dear sister Janet.
it is 2 in the morning and most of our men are asleep in their dugouts.
Yet I could not sleep myself before writing to you of all the wonderful events of Christmas Eve.
In truth, what happened seems almost like a fairy tale, and if I hadn't been through it myself, I would scarce believe it.
Just imagine, while you and the family sing carols before the fire in London, I did the same with the enemy soldiers here in the battlefields of France.
As I wrote before, there has been little serious fighting of late. The first battles of war left so many dead that both sides have held back until replacements could come from home. So we have mostly stayed in our trenches and waited.
But what a terrible waiting it has been, knowing that any moment an artillery shell might land and explode beside us in the trench, killing or maiming several men. And in daylight, not daring to lift our heads above ground for fear of a sniper's bullet.
And the rain! It has fallen almost daily. Of course it collects rain in the trenches, where we must bail it out with pots and pans. And with the rain comes mud, a good foot or more deep.
It splatters and cakes everything and constantly sucks at our boots. One new recruit got his foot stuck in it, and then his hands too when he tried to get out. Just like in that American story of the tar baby.
Through all this, we couldn't help feeling curious about the German soldiers across the way. After all, they faced the same dangers we did and slogged about in the same muck.
What's more, the first trenches was only 50 yards from ours. Between us lay no man's land, bordered on both sides by barbed wire. Yet they were close enough we sometimes heard their voices.
Of course, we hated them whenever they killed our friends, but other times we joked about them and almost felt like something we had in common.
And now it seems they felt the same.
Just yesterday morning, Christmas Eve day, we had a first good feast. Cold as we were, we welcomed it, because at least the mud was full shower.
Everything was tinged with white frost, while a bright sun shone over all. Perfect Christmas weather.
During the day, there was little shelling or rifle fire from either side, and as the darkness fell on our Christmas Eve, the shooting stopped entirely.
Our first complete silence in months. We hoped it might promise a peaceful holiday, but we didn't count on it. We've been told the Germans might attack and try to catch us off guard.
I went to the dugout to rest. Lying on my cot, I must have drifted asleep. All at once, I found him shaking me awake, saying, "Come and see! See what the Germans are doing!" I grabbed my rifle, stumbled on into the trench, and stuck my head cautiously above the sandbags.
I never hoped to see a stranger and more lovely sight. Clusters of tiny lights were shining all along the German line, left and right as far as the eye could see.
What is it? I asked in bewilderment, and someone answered, "Christmas trees."
And so it was. The Germans had placed Christmas trees in front of their trenches, lit by candle or lantern, like beacons of goodwill.
And then we heard their voices raised in the song. Stille Nacht, stille Nacht.
This carol may not be yet familiar to us in Britain, but one soldier newly translated, "Silent night, holy night." I have never heard one lovelier or more meaningful than that quiet, clear night. It's dark and softened by a first quarter moon.
When the song finished, the men in our trenches applauded. Yes, British soldiers applauded Germans.
Then one of our own men started singing, and we all joined in.
The first Noel, the angel did say.
In truth, some are not nearly as good as the Germans. They're fine harmonies, but they responded with enthusiastic applause of their own. And then began another.
Oh,
Tannenbaum, oh, Tannenbaum.
Then we replied to,
Oh, come, all ye faithful. But this time they joined in, singing the same words in Latin. Ad est fidelis.
British and German harmonizing across the Holy Man's land. I would have thought nothing could be more amazing, but what came next was more so.
English, come over! You hear one of them shout. You no shoot, we no shoot.
There in the trenches, we looked at each other in bewilderment. Then one of us shouted joking, "You come over here."
To our astonishment, we saw two figures rise from their trench, climb over their barbed wire, and advance unprotected across no man's land.
One of them called, "Send out the suit and talk."
I saw one of our men with his rifle to the ready, and no doubt others did the same. But our captain called out, "Hold your fire!" Then we climbed out and went to meet the Germans halfway.
We heard them talking, and a few minutes later, the captain came back with a German cigar in his mouth. "We've agreed there will be no shooting before midnight tomorrow," he announced. "But sentries are to remain on duty, and the rest of you, stay alert."
Across the way, we could make out 2 or 3 men starting out of their trenches coming towards us.
Then some of us were climbing out too, and in minutes more, there we were in no man's land. Over 100 soldiers and officers of each side, shaking hands with men we'd been trying to kill just hours earlier.
Before long, a bonfire was built, and around it we mingled. British khaki and German gray. I must say, the Germans were better dressed with fresh uniforms from Hollywood.
Only a couple of our men knew German, but more of the Germans knew English. I asked one of them why was that, because many have worked in Hotel Cecil. Before all this, I was a waiter at Hotel Cecil. Perhaps I waited on your table. Perhaps you did, I said, laughing.
One German told me he had a girlfriend in London and that the war had interrupted their plans of marriage. I told him, "Don't worry, we'll have you beat by Easter, and you can come back and marry the girl." He laughed at that. Then he asked if I would send her a postcard he'd give me later. I promised I would.
Another German had been a porter at Victoria Station. He showed me a picture of his family back in Munich. His oldest sister was so lovely. I said I should get to meet her someday. He beamed and said he would like that very much and gave me his family's address.
Even those who could not converse could still exchange gifts. Our cigarettes for their cigars, our tea for their coffee, our corned beef for their sausages. Badges and buttons from the uniforms changed owners. And one of our lads walked off with a spiked helmet.
I myself gave you a jackknife for a leather equipment belt. A fine souvenir to be go when I get home.
Newspapers to change hands. The Germans howled with laughter at ours. They assured us that French was finished and Russians nearly beaten too.
We told them that was nonsense. And one of them said, "Well, you believe your newspapers and we'll believe ours."
Clearly, they are lied to. Yet after meeting these men, I wonder how truthful our own newspapers have been.
These are not the savage barbarians we read so much about. They are men with homes and families, hopes and fears, principles and, yes, love of country.
In other words, men like ourselves.
Why are we led to believe otherwise?
As it grew late, a few more songs were traded around the fire, and then all joined in for "I'm Not Lying to You," Old Lang Syne.
Then we parted with promises to meet again tomorrow.
And even some talk a football match.
I was just starting back to the trenches when an older German clutched my arm. "My God," he said, "why cannot we have peace and all go home?" I told him gently. "That you must ask your emperor." He looked at me then, searchingly. "Perhaps, my friend, but also we must ask our hearts."
And so, dear mother,
Dear wife,
Dear friend,
Dear sister,
tell me, has there ever been such a Christmas Eve in all history?
and what does it all mean? This impossible befriending of enemies.
for the fighting here, of course it means regrettable little. Decent fellows those soldiers may be, but we follow orders and we do the same.
besides, we are here to stop their army and send it home, and never could we shirk that duty.
Still, one cannot help but imagine what would happen if the spirit shown here were caught by the nations of the world.
Of course, disputes must always arise.
But what if our leaders were to offer well wishes in place of warnings?
Songs in place of slurs.
Presents in place of reprisals.
Would not all war end at once?
All nations say they want peace.
Yet on this Christmas morning, I wonder if you want it quite enough.
Yours truly,
Yours always,
Sincerely,
With all my love,
John.
Andrew.
Philip,
Tom.